Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about the Castle Creation speed controllers. It's very powerful programming, data logging, and software updates. We'll also talk about its manual programming, its computer programming cards, and its error codes. What you see on the table here is a Traxxas controller, a lithium polymer battery, the Castle Creations Mamba X speed controller and a motor, as well as our test box over here. The first thing you'll need to do with any Castle Creation speed controller is solder on a connector to plug your battery in. I've already done this here just to save us some time. You'll also need to connect your motor to your speed controller. You'll notice on the back of the motor they are labeled A, B, and C. Those also are labeled on the speed controller so you know where to plug them in. Whenever you run this censored cable, you need to make sure that Castle Creation speed controllers are plugged in the correct orientation. Otherwise, you may see some damage occur when trying to operate the motor. The first thing we'll show you is a very simple calibration mode. You'll need to do this with all Castle Creation speed controllers. This will teach the speed controller what the commands are for full throttle, full reverse, and neutral positions. So we'll start by plugging our battery pack in, making sure that our polarity is correct. We'll make sure our controller is turned on and apply full throttle. Power on our speed controller and wait for tones to emit. After those tones are emitted, we'll give it a full reverse. And after those tones, we'll give it a neutral. The speed controller is now calibrated to the radio control unit. We can give it a basic spin here, and that will show you that the motor is working. If you install your motor into your vehicle and pull the trigger and the vehicle is operating in reverse, typically speed controllers you can simply reverse any two of these cables. However, with the Castle Creation speed controller, as I mentioned earlier, if you get these cables in the wrong orientation, the motor will not operate properly, and you may damage your equipment. So to fix that, we will have to program the electronic speed controller. Castle Creations offers their manual here and shows you the process in the manual of how you will adjust things manually. We'll go through the motor reverse direction in this video just to show you the basics of how that operates. So we'll power off our speed controller. See, the light is turned off. Just like before, we'll hold the trigger all the way, and then we will power on our speed controller. Only we'll continue holding until that light begins flashing yellow. Now we can release. So this is indicating to you that it has entered programming mode. So you hear the two beeps. The first beep is indicating which programming option it is in. So this is the brake reverse type. The second beep is indicating that it is choosing option 1. If we were to apply the throttle, it would confirm option 1 as our setting. By applying reverse, it would move to the second option, which would be without reverse. The speed controller also has a crawler reverse option should you want to use that. In this instance, we will confirm option 1 by pulling the throttle. So that beeping is indicating that it has registered that as its option 1. Releasing, you'll hear 3 beeps. So those 2 short beeps is indicating that it is in menu 2 and option 1 is currently selected. Again, by pulling the trigger for auto LiPo mode, we'll confirm that setting. So now you hear 4 beeps, 3 short beeps and a 4th beep. That 4th beep is indicating option 1 at 25% power. The default in this speed controller is 50% power. So by applying reverse, you'll hear 3 short beeps followed by 2 short beeps. Applying full throttle would choose option 2 as its setting. 4 beeps is the drag brake. Option 1 is the default, so we'll select that again. 5 beeps is indicating the motor type. Brushless is default, and because we are using brushless, in this case we will select that as our default. 6 beeps is our motor direction. Normal is by default. Reverse would be option 2, so in this case we will apply our reverse. 6 short beeps followed by 2 short beeps would be reverse options, so we'll select that here. Now that the system has come on armed, your motor is programmed to operate in the reverse direction from normal. If you wish to program your electronic speed controller via the PC programmer, it will look something like this. This is available separately. And if you look very closely, you'll see just in front of your pins is a negative, a positive, and a signal. In this case, you would unplug your speed controller from your receiver, and you would line up your cables appropriately. If you plug this in backward, no damage will occur, but that light will stay solid red. By plugging this in correctly, that light will turn a solid green. Now in this case, it's not working because our speed controller is on. So if we power off our speed controller and replug this in, now you'll see that that light is blinking green. And we'll switch over to the computer here so that you can see what that actually does here in just a second. All right, now that we're over to our computer here, I can show you the Castle Link software. So we'll start by plugging in our speed controller. And as soon as we plug in the speed controller, the Castle Link software will recognize the speed controller. This pop-up window that has appeared here is indicating that there is a new version of firmware, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Once we click OK, the software will read the values within the speed controller, and then we'll give you options to adjust. So if we click on our basic tab, we'll have such things as our auto LiPo cutoff, our cutoff voltages, our reverse types, our BEC voltages, brake amounts, and drag brakes. You can change any of these values by clicking the drop-down menu and selecting a value within the box. If you're confused as to what any of these settings do, you can click on one of these question marks here, and it will give you a synopsis of the setting and its values, as well as things that you might consider adjusting. So this is a useful feature when you're just learning the software. Within this tab, the most useful features will be your cutoff voltages and your BEC voltages, so that you can properly match your BECs to your servos that you have installed. So if you have a high voltage servo, you'll want to use a 7.5 volt setting. This will let you take full advantage of the servo's power and speed. Drag brakes will be a useful feature if we're in a rock crawler. This will start applying the brake as soon as you let go of the throttle so that your vehicle doesn't slip on a slanted surface. Your reverse type has a crawler reverse, so that if you wanted to set it up for a rock crawler, you have that option. Under your power tab is your start power, your max power, your reverse percentages, and your punch control. Your max power, you can think of this like a training mode. So you can set this for 50% throttle or less if you wish. You can also select a custom value should you want to use something like a 10%. I just keyed that in instead of using the arrows. 10% most of the time will not allow your speed controller to operate, so 30% really is your bottom. Punch control will give you a softer start, while start power will give you a more aggressive start. Your motor test, your torque limit test here, as soon as you turn on your speed controller, this will make your motor run, and it will not stop running until you have completed that test. So you want to avoid clicking this button unless you're prepared for that. Under your Advanced tab, you'll have your arming time, your auxiliary wire mode, your live link, and your throttle deadband. In this tab, your most useful features are your auxiliary wire mode, which will let you adjust features within your speed controller from your radio controller. For rock crawling, your drag brake adjustment will be your most useful setting. Your throttle deadband is very useful when you're using an onboard audio system. Onboard audio systems will activate when you pull the trigger, but most of these systems are such a small throttle deadband that as soon as you pull the trigger, the vehicle will begin running, and that may ruin the aesthetic. So by opening this throttle deadband, you can take more advantage of that aesthetic of your onboard audios. Under your motor tab, you have your motor direction. If you remember earlier in the video, we went through how to adjust this manually. In this case, it's very simple. You just click the normal or the reverse, and that will set that for you. Your motor type, if you're using a brushless system, I would recommend leaving this on Smart Sense, as this will automatically pick up your sensor cable. If you're using a brush motor, of course, you'll need to select that here. For sensorless motor timing, this will allow you to cheat the motor into giving you more performance. However, this will come at the cost of overheating. Your motor temperature cutoff is a useful feature, as this will cut off your motor if it overheats. So setting this at a 210 degrees is a bit high for your speed controller. I would recommend something more 180 or 170. Now keep in mind, if your sensor cable comes unplugged, your system will shut off. So that is a side effect that you'll have to deal with. Under logging, this logging feature will store information about your speed controller's performance, and you can download that data here. Under the throttle curve, you can grab the graph anywhere in this throttle curve and change the curve. So if you wanted to adjust how aggressively or how slowly the power comes on in your speed controller, this is a very simple way to do that. This also exists under your brake curve as well, that will adjust that sensitivity of your braking. Under your software tab, this is where you would do your firmware updates. The current firmware in this software is 2.02, and you'll see that there is a new version of 2.06 available. But notice this says beta. Now, beta softwares I don't usually recommend installing unless the changes have something to do with your LiPo cutoff. If we click here on changes, we can see what changes are added. Now, this is adding a drag brake ramp setting and also a B-link change. So if you're using the B-link, that would be something that you may want to process for an update. Now, under the data logging tab, I will download this. This will usually take some time. As soon as it's downloaded, we'll come back and I'll show you that data logging as well. Now that we've downloaded our data log, you'll be met with a screen that looks like this. And here you can look at all of the data that has been logged in your speed controller. So this default setting is going to be your voltage. And you can move your graph around and it will give you your voltages over time. You can also look at things like ripples, currents, wattages. And if you enable all of this, you'll notice this screen gets very populated and gets very hard to read. So I would recommend only enabling the features that you wish to view. So in the case of our temperature, we can see our temperature over time. So you can see how this will be useful to diagnose problems that are within your speed controller. Now that we're back to the Castle Link software, we'll finish up here with the clearing of the data logging. So you can click this button, which will clear your data logging, and empty it. Once your data logging gets full, it will have trouble storing more data. So this is something you do want to empty regularly if you are looking to utilize that data. Once you're finished, you can hit the update button here, and the update button will process all of the updates that you have entered. Once your status says OK, you can unplug your Castle Link. Now, when doing your software updates, if you wish to do your software update, you can start your software update, but once you begin, you cannot unplug the Castle Link. Once you do that, it will damage the speed controller. Up top here, you'll see there's a file button, which will give you your graph viewer from before if you wish to look at your data logging. There's also your device commands, which will read, update, and restore factory, languages, and the help tab. If you get confused on any of your settings, you can restore your defaults, and that will restore things back to your original setting. There's also an option in here to save and print your settings. So if you know that you have a setting that's working for you, you can save your setting to a file. That way, again, if you need to go back to your original setting, you can do that without losing anything. There's an option to load here as well. That's it as far as your basics in programming, so we'll get back to the rest of our video. If you want to use the Castle B link, such as this, This will give your speed controller the ability to Bluetooth to a smart device, such as an Android or an Apple. If you want to use this, you'll simply plug in your receiver cable here and plug this into your receiver. And if you want to use this feature, we'll switch over to the phone here so you can see how that option works. Now that we're back to the app on a smartphone, you can see the screen here in front of you. There's a couple of options, including log in and register. My advice would be to go ahead and register, create an account. I've had better success in linking up to the speed controller once it has been registered. See this link controller button in the middle here? When you click on this, it will offer you some instructions on how to set everything up. And once you do this, you'll find the Bluetooth links in range option, and you can try and connect to your Bluetooth module. Now this is a Samsung app, and I've had very limited success trying to get this to link up to the speed controller successfully, maybe one in every 15 or 20 attempts. The reviews I've read on the Apple version is that the Apple version works very well, but I'm not alone in my failed attempts to try and get these speed controllers to link up to an Android app. So for the purpose of demonstration, I'm going to show you the demo mode. If we select a speed controller, you'll see that there are a bunch of options in front of you. And just like in the PC version, you have all of your standard adjustments. Your LiPo cutoffs, your reverse types, your motor directions. These are very easy to set. So if you wanted to set your max forward power, you can select a value within the list, such as 90%. And that will change it on your vehicle. Down toward the bottom is your throttle curve section. The throttle curve section is not quite as easy to use as the PC version, that if we click here and click here, you'll see these hard lines. There is a curve option that's just here, and that will convert it to a curve instead of a linear. If you long press on one of these modules that I have uploaded, you'll see that that will turn a larger red, and this will allow you to move it around as you need or to remove the selected curve should you wish to do that. That option still exists under the brake curve as well, so if you want to adjust either of those, you can do that from here. The one thing I'm not sure you can do with the Bluetooth app is update your firmware, since I can't successfully get them to link with consistency. So you may still require the PC version if you wish to update your firmware. Now that you have seen all the programming options you have in a Castle speed controller, I'll show you the error codes. Another option for error codes are audible tones. The controller will emit short beeps and long beeps to help you determine where the fail points are. I'll show you those now. Now you can see with Castle Creation speed controllers why you may want one of these. With all of their options and features, these are great speed controllers to install on your radio controlled cars. They also make speed controllers for aircraft as well, and their programming and features are very similar. Now, as always, I have one last tip before we go. You want to always make sure that your LiPo mode is turned on in your speed controllers. This way you don't overdrain your LiPo and damage those. Now, I also have a video on LiPo battery maintenance, and if you want to check that out, it is located in my channel. Well guys, you made it through another video. If you've learned anything or benefited from this channel in any way, please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of our new content. I hope to see you in the next one.